So, you think computer simulators are better than real train sets? Well, you're probably right. So, train sets. The gateway to model railroading. Arguably the most important part of our hobby. Even more than the 500 models you've never taken out of the box. Anyway, gateway to model railroading. How many of you can remember your first train set? Here's mine. Smoky Mountain Express set by Bachmann. Or at least this is the earliest one I can remember. There's like 4 contenders. But anyway, what if you're not really into trains? What if you're just curious? Maybe a little silly. Maybe just wondering what it's like to be the Fat Controller. Well, then you're going to go to a hobby shop, or to a website like Model Train Stuff, Train World, and you'll start your search for a starter set. And your start options are looking like... Yes, Wow, these are lame. Now, granted, these are also available, and I will admit they are kinda cool. But these are the minority of sets. And I've always wanted the Overland Limited, and I still haven't bought one. But here's the thing. The Commander, Overland, and Kato sets all have one thing in common. They are unique. The Commander comes with 2 locomotives and a DCC controller. It's a great way to get into DCC, and it even has a siding! Like, how many train sets these days have that? I think a total of none! Besides this one! So maybe one! I don't know! Plus, the Overland comes with a 484 Northern and a full 9-car train behind it. 9 cars! And a big Northern, something very different we haven't seen since like the 70s. Well, at least the 80s. And the CNW and CB&Q sets offered by Kato, you get a whole passenger train. Not just part of one, not even a quarter of one. You get a whole train. And that's the point. So many of these sets don't have that. Contrast that with the Pacific Flyer, the McKinley Explorer, Kato's Gevo sets, Lionel's goofy-ass sets that offer nothing but dumb shilling crossover nonsense with non-train-related IPs and companies that should be collector's items collecting dust as no one buys them. But no, now they are being claimed that they are real train sets that get people into the hobby. That's stupid. No, this doesn't happen. Get out of here. Nobody likes you. Sorry, I really hate these things. And like, I can understand a freight car. Or a passenger car, or maybe like a whole set of passenger cars, or maybe just something small like that, just not a whole set. Nobody wants these. And they're as dumb for the hobby as a box of gimmicks in World of Warships. Everyone knows this?
Nice argument, Senator. Why don't you back it up with a source?
My source is that I made it the fuck up.
Anyway, back to my point. Most of these sets give you very little in terms of either value for money or even a small railroad. They barely give you a taste of trains or model railroading in general. So let's give some historical examples. And keep in mind, a lot of these train sets have a lot of molded in detail for their steam locomotives. Even the diesels weren't exceptions to this rule. They had very few separately applied parts. And also keep in mind that these trains of the 70s and 80s, they were good for their time. Much like how Bachmann is to brass today, they were the best that was available that wasn't brass. Alright, so these historical examples I've been hyping up, let's take a look at them. So let's start here with some Tyco train sets from the late 60s. The Golden West set, we get a 460 and 3 coaches. I'm pretty sure they were the Overtons of the actual CR Railroad, just like CR Road number 3 is here with it. And we get an oval of track. Nothing too special, but definitely better than, I would still say, most new ones. The Dixie Belle, this one is even better. We still get the same 460, but at least we get like a medium-sized steam engine. 2 open cars, 2 closed cars, and what I mean by that is 2 flat cars and 2 box cars. And we get what I am assuming is a combine, so we could either run a freight train or a passenger train. Very small passenger train, but a passenger train nonetheless. And still get the same oval, but again, we just get a bit more value. The Shifter Action Freight Set. Terrible name, however, very cool set, because again, even though we get an oval of track and an 040, so a real small engine, we get a crane with it to clean up our accidents. We get a bridge to have accidents on. We get a crossing gate to have accidents with. You get so much stuff that you can actually play with, and like, elevation on a train set is so important because it brings another dimension. And imagine if Bachmann included a crossing gate with some of their train sets. I would honestly take back some of the things I've said in this video already if we got crossing gates included with some of them. Just something a little extra that's like a bit of scenery, or again, that elevation, so we can just kind of explore more of model railroading. But let's move on to some other ones. Here are some Bachmann ones from the mid to late 80s. The Ole Smoky. Excellent set. Again, may only be an oval, but much like the Shifter Action set, we get a trussel. And this one even lights up. How cool is that? We have a lighted trussel. Granted, it only flashes, but still, it's a lighted trussel. And we get a log unloader. Again, how cool is that? Our train actually does something. It actually goes somewhere. And we get a Great Northern 280. Again, a medium-sized steam engine, and it's got the green boiler, so we got a bit of color, big sky blue caboose, even though that would have never ran with this engine, but who cares, because it's a train set. And we have a Burlington Northern Green 2-bay hopper, which shows up a lot in Bachmann sets for some reason. But moving on to the Empire Builder, we get a 484 Northern, and a figure 8, an extended figure 8 at that. Again, how cool is that? And granted, this 484 isn't actually a CB&Q 484, it's a Santa Fe Northern that they've relettered essentially, or maybe fantasized into a CB&Q Northern, but at least it's there. It's cool. It resembles it enough. And when you put it into the context of a train set to get you started in the hobby, it makes a lot more sense to do that than to offer this as a separately available model. Now, granted, if Bachmann still made their Santa Fe Northerns and they did this, I would probably buy one. I'm not going to lie. Depending on how much it was, I would probably buy one. But we also get telegraph lines or telegraph poles with this set as well, so we get a bit of scenery. And again, we have the figure 8 to have crashes on. We have a flat car to haul logs or whatever else our imagination as a child says we should haul. And we get a good variety of cars as well with it. A stock car to haul, you know, your sister's farm animals, and we have a tank car to haul oil, a box car, because, you know, box cars are part of freight trains these days. CB&Q caboose, which matches, and I think that's actually the correct scheme for this engine. And we have a covered gondola, something you just don't really see that often in train sets, let alone as separately available. And now let's move on to these. Santa Fe Action Freight Set by Tyco again. Look at how much you get here. So you get what I'm assuming is a GE something, or sorry, Alco 630 high hood, even though I don't think the Santa Fe had high hoods. We get an operating log car, which is included in the set, which is super cool. And Oscar Mayer Wiener car. That's how I'm going to choose to describe that. Please don't question it. A Burlington Northern 3-bay hopper, for some reason again in green. And we get 2 other cars with freight loads on them, even though we don't have the accessories for them. But again, how cool is that? Plus we get a passing siding, so we can have, you know, more fun. The Mammoth of the Rails, again, we get a steam engine this time, which automatically makes the set good. I'm definitely not biased. We can unload our boxcar. We have a 45 by 63 double oval and telegraph poles with both of them. I forgot to mention that. And whatever this Maxwell House thing is, I have no idea what that is, but it's still cool that we have it. And it's a steam freight set. Granted, it's an 080 switcher, but it's a big enough engine that you're kind of like, yeah, I could see this doing runs outside the yard. I mean, you really wouldn't see 060s doing that, but I could definitely see 080s doing that. And you get a good selection of cars. You get a shiny shell car, which is actually pretty damn neat even for today. And again, you get to unload cars. And you have cars that can be unloaded as well if you got the accessories. Let's take a look at some Bachmann N-scale stuff. Now, granted, the Yardbird, you could argue, is a pretty lame set. But what I will argue with you is that compared to the one today, it is cooler. For a couple of different reasons. We get a small diesel, and it's a very small set. And from what I understand, I don't have the pricing figures in front of me, but that was a very cheap set even for the day. Next set, the Metroliner train. Again, this one may look kind of boring on the surface, as you basically get a 4-car passenger train, for lack of a better term, and an oval of track. But here's the thing. They are fast, from what I have seen. And the other thing is, they weren't available separately, at least for the first few years, as far as I can find, going back through magazines and catalogs. But we get such a unique train with this. And I think that is one of the biggest selling points of it, is we get a unique train, still may only be an oval of track, but it still just screams fun. And when you consider that a passenger train, well, it does still go to stations and stuff, when you consider that in the late 80s, when those trains were still relatively new, and I'm just going to use that word a little loosely, relatively, it just brings a new dimension, and it feels much more like the Northeast Corridor, where you don't see trains stopping as much. You see them as an express service. And, I really got to get one of these, and they actually retailed for under $60. I will bring that point up later. Now, the twin freight set, again, may look a little lame because we still only get an oval of track, but we get an A-B set of F units, the way God intended, and a couple of freight cars. So we can kind of take things somewhere, if you will. It may not be the best example, but it's still a good example. The Northerner. Now, this is a train set that I really want its modern counterpart, and probably after I make this video, I'm going to go buy. We get another Santa Fe 484 Northern, and we get a bunch of freight cars with it, and a bigger oval with the twin freight. We got a 25 by 16. With the Northern, we get a 36 by 18. So we get larger curves, and we get a lot more straight track. So our train, again, can actually go somewhere and maybe even go underneath a desk as a tunnel, or go underneath a chair, or even go by a chair as a big mountain range like it shows in the background. Again, all of these sets on here, real bangers. Lionel, someone who does not get enough credit for their 70s HO stuff. I mean, just look at these sets. We get 2 American Freedom train sets, which is just instantly cool. One of them even has 4449, or the Daylight, or a Golden State, whatever you want to call it. And, I mean, just look at everything you get. How could this not be cool? Again, maybe ovals of track, but look at how different they are. We get cars that have not been made since Lionel, as far as I understand, with Americana on them. And this was the only way you could get them. So why the hell would you not buy the train set? Plus, you got a Northern. And even though it's slightly inauthentic with this dark blue up here, I actually like this paint scheme better than the historical one. I'm sorry. Fight me. We get an FA. 4 cars. We get a 7-car one. Or sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-car one. I guess they count the tender as a separate car. But we still get a 5-car train of Americana. Of the freaking, Freedom Train. How could this not be cooler? And even the Chessie Arrow is cool. I mean, so we get a GP7, we get a wreck crane, so when we have accidents, we can clean it up. And we get a signal tower, or a gantry, I think it's actually technically called. We get a bridge for some reason, even though the set isn't elevated. I don't know why you would do that. It's still neat. And we get a passing siding and crossover, or a switch to have accidents on again, or to repair the switch with the wreck crane. You just get so much neat stuff. And these weren't even the most expensive sets in their day, which is a bigger point I want to harp on. These were not stupidly expensive sets in their day. And yet, they're far cooler than the most expensive sets we have today. And I mean, look at this one. This is probably the best example of why modern train sets suck. Because Bachmann makes slot cars today in O gauge. May not be HO, like this Tyco one, but they make them in O gauge. How did Tyco in the 70s through the early 80s make something so impressive? Just think about that. Just think about that while I'm not talking. We have a road and rail set. So we get an oval of track, may not be the most exciting, but then we get a whole highway system with it that we can collect coal or gravel or whatever the small rocks we want them to be. We have a dump yard where we can take everything. We get a truck and a semi-truck. We get crossings to have accidents on. We have a hopper with the train set to haul the coal with, too. And I'm sure they made accessories so you could take it from the trucks and put it into the freight cars. How cool would that be to see this today? Bachmann could easily make this an O gauge. There's absolutely no reason they couldn't make this an O gauge. Or they could even downscale it to HO. Imagine how effing cool that would be if we had this in HO again. And just like, we could like make mini worlds that actually interact with each other as opposed to just watching trains go around a circuit and fantasizing that our boxcars are being loaded and unloaded. And I know some people may be thinking right now, okay, well, how much did these sets actually cost, you know? What is the buying power of, let's just arbitrarily say, $70 back in the 70s versus today? Okay, yeah, you know, we can do that. Let's move on to the next one here. As this one actually has a price on it. This is the Railroad Empire. And in case you can't read it, because it was a relatively small image, we get a 282. So we get a mic, we get a couple of cars, we get to unload, and we get to unload a boxcar unloader. We'll just arbitrarily name these things. Boxcar unloader, a culvert unloader, an operating crossing, piggyback truck terminal, and we get a passing siding, or passing track, double oval, whatever you want to call it, 45 by 54 inches, so a nice size. So this train set cost $78 with the power pack, or $71 without the power pack, depending on if you needed it or not, which is also a cool option. So that's $70 then. To buy a brass DM&IR N3 282 Mikado in 1969, this set is 1971, but in 1969 that's when I believe this model was made, it cost you $73.50. It's a little bit more than this without the power pack, but less than the complete with power pack. $73.50 versus $78. Now, if that doesn't scream value for money, I really don't know what does. You could get a brass exact model of a, we'll call relatively niche railroad, or you could get all of this train set. And again, you could make the argument, it's 70s garbage. But when you think about what will actually get somebody into the hobby, is it a brass engine or is it a great value for money train set? And in case you're wondering today what that would buy you, that would essentially be, so the last DM&IR N3 will use the same engine. This one is painted that I have, but I guess they come unpainted. So you're looking at about $325 for... Yeah, we'll just, you know, we'll take the lowest number I can find to make it a bit fair. $300 for a unpainted brass N3 DM&IR mic. And the best train set you could get for that money, and we're not talking about what you can add, just the train set itself, would be the Overland Limited without going over. And the Overland Limited of today doesn't even include a figure 8. It's just an oval of track and 9 cars. I can't explain it any better. You just don't get nearly as much value for money these days with your train set. And it's not even a case of, well, let's pick a different train set. I mean, you could make the argument that you could get I believe it's called the Chattanooga Choo Choo. I'll put up pictures. The Chattanooga Choo Choo. And maybe, is it called the Chessie Special, I think it is? Where you get a Chesapeake and Ohio 060. Again, I'll put it up. You could get both of those sets for the same price as the DM&IR mic, but only one of them comes with a station or kind of anything else, while the other one doesn't, and they're pretty much the same price. Modern train sets really do suck. Now, I've been ranting for over 10 minutes showing the glory of the past, and if I don't offer a solution, I'm just whining, as Roosevelt said. And if I keep listing bad sets, I'll never reach my destination, as Churchill once said. So, here are a few proposals.
Complete with electric train, pre-wired tracks, transformer.
So, proposal number 1. a loss leader. So for those who don't know what the term means, a loss leader is a pricing strategy where a product is sold at a price below its market cost to stimulate other sales of more profitable goods or services. This is per Wikipedia. So you take a lower profit, or maybe even just break even on train sets, and make more profit on things like track, cars, additional locomotives. Since a little 060 is now $100, if you overcharge for a train set, no one will get into the hobby. And thus no one will buy your $220 Pacific. That doesn't even include a decoder. For fuck's sake, Bachman. Back to the point. If a train set is cheap, I will likely buy additional track and cars at the same time, and thus spend more money and make up for the less profit or even loss on the train set itself.
Good family entertainment is hard to come by these days, but a Rail King train set can be a lot of fun for the whole family.
Proposal 2. Value for money. Now this may seem a bit similar to a loss leader, but I assure you it is actually different. Essentially, it means you give a customer a great deal on the set. So either you have very cheap sets with next to nothing in them as a loss leader, or you give them a bigger set that has better value for money, i.e. you spend a little bit more to get a bigger set. So additional tracks, say a siding, a water tower, a couple of figures, maybe even a train station, kind of like how the Chattanooga is. This is a way to sell bigger sets more effectively, and it gives a much higher chance for children and adults to get into the hobby, especially if sets include things like switches and crossovers, things to have crashes with, and buildings for people to kind of start making a little town. Giving people good value for money will make a customer for life rather than a Christmas.
And it doesn't stop there, because TrackMat will help you build a permanent layout.
Proposal 3. Expansion packs. So Hornby tried this method once, but I think Hornby's recent shenanigans with pricing isn't a great source of data for the system not working. But in short, you have a basic train set that you buy, such as an oval of track, train, and controller. Then you have an expansion pack of a siding with some more track and maybe 2 freight cars. Another may contain a passing track with 2 freight cars. Another one could be 4 passenger cars and a station building. You get the point. This is kind of value for money in another form, but the goal of an expansion pack is to build a basic railroad and have a few trains to play with, kind of like the Hornby TrackMat system. Or Kato's version sets, I guess you'd call them, the track packs. And really, this introduces people to different aspects of the hobby in a bite-sized way, leading to a customer for life and more model railroad enthusiasts to buy your future models. Thank you everybody so much for watching, and what do you all think of what I said? Am I wrong? Maybe technically correct? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you want me to dive into older train sets from the 70s to the 2000s, I would be absolutely happy to. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more. See you all in the next video. Thank you again for watching.